No, please, no more startup idea. On this episode, you're going to hear why I believe we should stop spending so much time fixated on startup ideas and think a little differently about investing in something else.
Because as an investor, I will tell you this thing that I care about more than anything. I want a demonstrated history of commitment to the problem. Right? So just because you had a great idea doesn't mean that I want to fund you or back you or be a part of you.
I get an email probably a couple times a week from someone saying, Eric, I'd love to pick your brain on my startup idea. Now, I'm always happy to be helpful, but boy, I want to tell you one of the things I've learned in my own adventures is that finding something you're passionate about is way more exciting than a great startup idea. Because most of the best startup ideas don't start out as really good startup ideas. They sound crazy or ridiculous. Think about some of the ideas of the huge successes today. The idea of taking a ride in someone else's car that you don't know sounds crazy. Or staying in someone else's apartment that you don't know sounds ridiculous. But if you look at them today, Airbnb and Uber seem like obvious things that you would do. Instead, what I really urge people to do is think about finding things you're passionate about, because early on in the days of an Airbnb and Uber or the next Airbnb and Uber, you want to find something you're working on that you're passionate about. So what I recommend to people do in their early 20s is invest in passion. And one of the things that I found when I studied the Forbes 30 under 30 is that more and more of them were thinking about things they were curious about in their research and their passions. In this talk, you'll hear me go a little bit deeper into why I believe passions are so much more important than startup ideas.
And you can hear I get driven nuts by a lot of things. Everyone and their mother says, I've got a great startup idea. Who says they have a great startup idea? You don't, all right? None of you have a great startup idea. Your startup ideas are just a manifestation of you. And so one of the things that people oftentimes say is that I need to be an entrepreneur, I need to start a company right now. Now it's okay, certainly if you have something you're passionate about, do it, but don't feel like your goal is, if you want to be an entrepreneur one day, is to have to start a company to prove to be it. That's the problem. Many people think I want to be an entrepreneur, so the only way you can be an entrepreneur is to actually start a company right now. Here's the secret. Serial entrepreneurs, on average, start their first company when they're 27 years old, right? Serial entrepreneurs spend an average of 6 years at one company before they start their first company, right? So the key thing to understand is don't focus on building a startup, focusing on developing your passions, your purpose, things that you care about, demonstrate what you care about. Too many times people get infatuated with the startup idea, the latest app. And again, if you have a company, that's great. But remember to also focus on proving that you care about this thing. Because as an investor, I will tell you this thing that I care about more than anything. I want a demonstrated history of commitment to the problem, right? So just because you had a great idea doesn't mean that I want to fund you or back you or be a part of you. I want to know, is that funny or not good? Okay, good. All right, did I spill on myself? So focus on that. That's the important thing to do, is focus on things in your teens and 20s that help you explore and develop your purpose and your passions, because that's where stuff matters. Don't focus on saying, to be an entrepreneur, I have to have a startup, because you don't. Now, if you do have a startup, that's great. But remember, don't forget that you still also have to